In the Middle Ages, warfare could come at a terrible price. This may sound like a fairly obvious and even simplistic statement, but I am not just talking about the physical casualties, which could, of course, rise to truly terrible numbers in any given conflict. However, in an age of strong religious convictions, the impact fighting and killing could have on a man's conscience could be considerable, but less for the man or men they had killed in battle than for the fear of the judgment of God that would come afterwards. Often, men of the same faith would wage war against one another in the aim of seeking some material advantage, perhaps to seize land or property, or even take a crown. And even the wrath of God was not always a deterrent strong enough to thwart human greed. For medieval popes, to see Christians killing other Christians was a terrible waste. Ambitious kings, princes, nobles, and other such men needed guidance if they were to win and keep God's favour. By the mid 800s, a new type of war was being promoted by the papacy, a type of war that popes hoped would channel the aggression and ambition of powerful men across Europe. Instead of being at each other's throats, the papacy hoped to encourage Christians to fight non believers, such as pagans or Muslims. Converting such groups to the so called true faith by force of arms was, in the eyes of the Pope, far more justifiable than internal conflict. It would also naturally lead to opportunities to gain wealth and prestige, and all the while doing God's work. And there would be plenty of opportunities for Christian rulers to fight non believers. In the 700s, Spain had fallen into Islamic rule, and there would be Arab raids into Italy as well. And by the mid 800s, there would be another significant problem for Christian Europe to worry about: the Vikings. These pagan warriors struck fear wherever they went, leaving a trail of waste and destruction, but they weren't invincible. In England, in 878, Alfred the Great had defeated the Danish king of East Anglia, Guthrum, at the Battle of Edington, and Guthrum converted to Christianity in the aftermath. A couple of decades earlier, before Alfred's great victory, Pope Leo IV, whom Alfred had met when he was a young boy, wrote to a Christian army with Italy under threat from Arabic raids. Leo assured the Christian army that those who died fighting in the name of Christ would gain safe entry into heaven, and past misdemeanors would be forgiven. In 878, the same year as Alfred triumphed at Edington, Pope John VIII wrote back to the Frankish king Louis II the Stammerer. Louis, waging war against the Vikings himself, sought reassurances from the Pope with regards to forgiveness of his sins. John replied to Louis, telling him, "We confidently say that those who, out of love to the Christian religion, shall die in battle fighting bravely against pagans or unbelievers, shall receive eternal life. For the Lord has said through his prophet, in whatever hour a sinner shall be converted, I will remember his sins no longer." As far as Pope John was concerned, even the greatest of sinners could still save their souls by waging holy war. Even though the Crusading era is generally dated from the moment Pope Urban II began to preach for the First Crusade in 1095, what we have seen here is that the origins and basic idea of the Crusade actually began much earlier. And Crusades aren't just the stereotypical idea of Christianity versus Islam. It could be argued, for instance, that Alfred the Great can be considered a crusader. He and his immediate successors reclaimed English land that had been lost to the pagan Vikings, and Alfred, as we've seen, secured the conversion of Guthrum. Although the Viking wars for the English and Europe at large had a long way to run yet. Alfred's success was definitely a blow in the favour of the Christian Church. Crusades would last throughout the medieval period. As well as in the Holy Land and Iberia, Crusades would be led in northern Europe, where paganism remained stubbornly ingrained, and against heretics in southern France. However, whether fought in earnest and genuine belief or not, there was nothing holy about crusading warfare. During the Albigensian Crusade, leaders of the heretical Cathars were given the choice: renounce your beliefs or be cast into the flames. Many of the leaders were burned alive, with only a few saving themselves by converting. It must be said that holy war was not always fought by the sword. There were those who tried to spread the word of Christianity by preaching and persuading, even in places where they knew their words would likely fall on deaf ears. So, to answer the question, what was a crusade? Well, firstly, it was about safeguarding and protecting Christian lands, but not just in the Holy Land as some may think. The Crusade, as we've seen, can trace its origins to the Islamic conquest of Spain in the 8th century and found its way to England and across Europe as Christian kingdoms sought to protect themselves and their identity from the threat of those they considered to be heathen. However, a crusade can't be considered a holy war per se. Just because a pope granted remission of sins to those who took the vow of crusade, it did not make those crusaders particularly holy, as was repeatedly demonstrated. Throughout the crusading era, greed would predictably manifest itself, and cruelty from different sides would also show itself. There is nothing holy about tossing so called heretics into the flames, as the Albigensian Crusade did, for example, or carry out large scale massacres, as often happened during a crusade. A crusade was a very human experience, driven initially by genuine belief in God and protecting the Christian faith, but all too prone to those great human traits of wanton greed and violence.